We are this week in Parsha Yitro. Yitro in Hebrew is basically Jethro, who is basically the father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu. The word Yitro is better known in English as Jethro, which, by the way, Jethro is basically not his name technically. It is actually his title. Technically, Yitro is not a name of Moshe's father-in-law. He has many other names, in fact, throughout in the Torah. He is known by 7 names. He is known by Ruel. He is known by Jether. He is known by Jethro. He is known by Hohab. He is known by Heber. He is known by Kenny. And he is known by Putiel. 7. Ruel, Jether, Jethro, Hoab, Heber, Kenny, Putiel. So, this is not his actual name. Now we see that in this portion, we have actually reached the highlight of the Torah. And what is the highlight of the Torah? Is the giving of the 10 commandments, or we received in Hebrew we call it the Aseret HaDeborot. It's the word Aseret HaDeborot, like we think, is not the 10 commandments. Yes, it is commandments, but it's not commandments. It's actually the 10 sayings. If you remember, when we studied Genesis 1, I talked about the 10 sayings in Genesis 1. There are 10 sayings in Genesis 1, and now we see in Exodus 20, we talk about the 10 sayings in Exodus. So each of these Aseret Deborot are to be understood as individual mitzvot. They're not supposed to be understood as individual mitzvot. Rather, they need to be understood as classification or categories of mitzvot. Each of the 613 commandments in the Torah will come under the 10 categories of the 10 sayings of God. I hope you understand what I said. There are these 10 commandments, 10 sayings. These are not individual commandments, but there are 10 categories, and under these 10 categories comes different parts of the 613 commandments of the Word of God. Let's turn to Matthew chapter 22. It talks about an incident where the master was questioned by a Torah scholar who asked him, Rabbi, Matthew chapter 22 verses 36 to 40. Matthew 22 verses 36 to 40. He says, Rabbi, which of the mitzvot of the Torah is the most important? And what did the master say? You are to love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. He says this is the greatest and the most important. The second is similar to you are to love your neighbor as yourself. So in other words, what the master is saying, 2 important commandments: loving the Lord your God and loving your neighbor as yourself. And the next part is very important. In verse number 40, what he says? He says the entire Torah and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. He's not saying the Torah and the prophets is done away if you do these 2. He's saying that the reason we do everything in the Torah and the prophets is based out of these 2 commandments. What is it? Loving God and loving your neighbor. So if we look at a graph, I would say the first part of the level of the graph is one side, I need to love God. Other side, I need to love my neighbor. Under this comes the 10 categories of the 10 sayings of God. Under the 10 categories comes the 613 categories of what it means to do the 10 sayings of God. So in other words, the foundation of all the 613 commandments are based out of 2 things: loving God, loving your neighbor. How do I love God is what the 613 commandments are actually telling me. How do I love my neighbor is how the 613 commandments are telling me. So because many people say, oh, I just need to love God and love my neighbor. But when it comes to a practical level, how do I do that? We don't know. Are you with me? So we need to understand that these categories of 613 commandments are basically binding to the Jewish people. And these are basically binding also for people who have been engrafted to the household of Israel. I wouldn't say binding. You have the opportunity to do what the commandments tell you to do. The only thing that is binding to the nations is the 7 laws of Noah, which is also known as the Noahide laws. What are the 7 Noahide laws? Which is basically that everyone all over the world should be doing it. It is, number 1 is to establish courts of justice. Number 2 is not to commit blasphemy. Number 3 is not to commit idolatry. Number 4 is not to commit incest or adultery. Number 5 is not to commit bloodshed. Number 6 is not to commit robbery or thievery. And number 7 is not to eat a flesh cut out of a living animal. This is the 7 laws that are binding to all the nations, and everybody is supposed to do it according to God's word. But the 613 commandments is basically only obligated by the Jewish people and those of us from the nations through the Messiah. If you believe that you are engrafted to the household of Israel, you have the opportunity to either join in and do the commandments, what God is basically saying. So the 10 commandments, if you know, is divided into 10 parts. The first one is about belief in God. What is it? What is the first commandment? I am Hashem, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. The second is about the prohibition of improper worship. The third is about prohibition of taking vows. The fourth is about observing sacred times, sacred festivals. Number 5 is about respecting your parents, respecting your teachers. Parents or teachers are on the same level. Number 6 is about prohibition about physically harming a person. Number 7 is about the prohibition of sexual immorality. Number 8 is about the prohibition of thievery or theft. Number 9 is about the prohibition of harming a person through speech by your words. And number 10 is the prohibition of coveting. Do not covet your neighbor's house, wife, money, anything. So this is very important to really look into it. So in fact, if we look at each week's Torah portion, there is so much to actually talk about. That's why the best part of it is that we come again and again concerning this year after year. We look at different angles. So this week, what I really want to focus on is something very, very important. We have now finally reached the meeting between God and us. We are now chosen to be a nation. All the instructions or rules of the Torah are given, or we can say this is the main highlight of the Torah. The entire Torah is summarized in the 10 commandments or the 10 sayings of God. And if one guards the 10 sayings, you're basically in good shape. Many people say, keeping all the Torah is very difficult. To them, I usually say, let's start with the 10. You start doing the 10, then we'll talk about the rest of the 613. Don't worry about the 600. We don't want to keep the 10, but we're worried about the 613. It doesn't work like that. But nevertheless, there is one commandment over here in the 10 sayings, which is very, very unusual. And especially where it is placed in the sayings. This generation which has come out of Egypt is a very different generation. It's a generation that have experienced the power of God. Today, in our generation, when we look at this generation today, our generation is not, when I say about my generation is the previous generation, okay? The younger generation, I don't know what you call it, the Z generation, X generation, the Gen Z generation. Okay, the Gen Z generation is very different from the previous many generations. Up until this generation, parents were put on a pedestal. The concept of honoring one's parents this mitzvah was taken very, very, very important. Today, kids don't actually value or honor their parents. In previous generations, one would not dare to talk in front of one's parents. One would not dare to do things that are dishonorable before one's parents. One would not dare to even sit at the father's seat. Or one would not even dare to answer back to their parents. Today's generation, they treat their parents as if the parents owe them something. It's called the entitlement generation. It is your responsibility to take care of me. Who said so? If you don't pay for me, if you don't give me what I want, when I want, then and there, you are not doing a responsibility. The children are teaching the parents what to do. I want something, I mean it now. If I don't get it now, why you don't want to give it to me? What is the reason? Or what will happen? 150 questions. In the old generation, if the father said something, no more asking. I don't even go back to ask. If I go back to ask, I don't know what is going to happen. So I better don't ask. In today's generation, people just it's argument after argument after argument. There is no stop to this level. It goes on and goes on. But. Sometimes we have to tell our children, can you please keep quiet? I don't want to hear it. I have other things to do. It's called the entitlement generation. Today's generation, especially in the Western world, the children have rights, do you know? You can't hit them. If you hit them, the children will sue the parents. They'll call 911. In India, we have not reached that level, but it sometimes happens also. But today, what I really want to specifically talk about is the mitzvah of honoring one's parents. In Hebrew, it's called kibud av-em, which is basically the mitzvah of honoring one's parents is part of the 10 commandments or the 10 sayings. What does it mean to honor your parents? How far do we need to go when it comes to the concept of honoring one's parents? How does the Torah, what does the Word of God define honoring your parents as? What does it mean? There were two people who asked the help of the rabbinical authority concerning some advice or counsel concerning their personal situation when it came to fulfilling the mitzvah of honoring one's parents. So I'm going to share about two real life scenarios of two individuals that had an issue concerning the mitzvah of honoring one's parents, and they basically are going to their local rabbi to ask them, how do I fulfill my obligation of what the scriptures talk about honoring one's parents? The first scenario is about a girl who in her childhood was abandoned by her father. At her young age, her father left the family, it doesn't matter all the details concerning it, but he left the family and he was not there to raise her, to support her. He didn't care about her mother, his wife. He never came for any of her birthdays. He never paid for any of her tuition or anything concerning her or her family. He basically completely turned his back against his daughter, and the family was basically pretty much on their own. Many years later, fast forward, the girl has grown up. She's living on her own. She has her own life. All of a sudden, one fine day, she receives a call from her father. The father is saying, Beta, I'm about to die. I'm on my deathbed. Please forgive me that I've not been there for you. And he's basically repenting for not being there. I would like to spend my last couple of days or couple of months with you. I'm not going to call your mother. Since you are my flesh and blood, I want to have a relationship with you. So she calls her rabbi and asks him, what should I do? What is my obligation to this man according to the Torah? Because I have not known him. I cannot stand him. He has never been there in my life. In fact, I'm angry with him because for the fact that he abandoned us when I was small. Now he wants to come back when he is sick. Now he wants to have a relationship with me. And according to the Torah, what is my obligation to him? What does the Torah say concerning the mitzvah of honoring one's parents? According to the Torah, what do I owe him? Do I owe him anything? And if I owe him anything, do I have to even honor him? That is scenario number one. The second scenario is as follows. The rabbi was asked, a woman asked a question to her rabbi, saying that her parents lived nearby and she wanted to be kind and nice to her parents. And because of that, every Shabbat, Erev Shabbat, Friday evening, she would invite her parents for a Shabbat meal. But during the whole meal, the mother is on her case, basically putting her down, insulting her, degrading her, complaining about her in front of the children. And this is what happens the whole time. The table is no longer holy unto the Lord. My mother is basically driving me nuts. She's making me crazy. She's being mistreated by her mother in every extreme way. So she asks the rabbi, do I continue inviting her for Shabbat? She's ruining my Shabbat. She's ruining the Shabbat meal. It's not fun for me. There is no joy of the Lord. It's not fun for the children. It's not fun for the kids. It's becoming very stressful. I don't want to be next to this woman. Do I have to continue inviting her for my Erev Shabbat celebration? What should I do in this situation? So the question is, what is the obligation of the child towards the parent when the parent is hurting the child? Now, by the way, when we say a child, this child is no longer a child. It is an adult, okay? It is mature already. So, does the child need to continue honoring the parents? Does the child need to turn around? What is the obligation of the child towards the parents when the parents are mistreating the child? It doesn't matter what the situation is, but the parents are not treating the child properly. Okay, so maybe it is physical abuse, maybe it is mental abuse, maybe it is emotional abuse, maybe it is sexual abuse, whatever it is. What is the responsibility of the child in such a case? What does the Torah tell the child to do in these situations? Does the child have to continue living with the circumstance? Or does the child have to leave? Or does the child have to ignore? Or does the child have to continue? What is it? So these are two real life scenarios which I found very, very interesting, because many people find themselves in similar situations when it comes to their parents. Now, when it comes to studying Torah, we need to understand, even though we are giving these scenarios, we need to understand sometimes these scenarios may or may not be applicable to you. That is why when you go through situations like this, it's very important to, instead of just listening to a message and making your own conclusions, to go to your spiritual authority and ask them, what in this situation should I do? Because studying Torah is case by case, which means it is different. Yes, we are studying Torah, but how is it applicable to me is not the same. The answer I may give to X is not the answer that I will give to Y. Why? Because it is not applicable. It's different. That's how it is. So when it comes to the mitzvah of honoring one's parents, there is no other mitzvah, there is no other commandment like this in the Torah. Now, the first thing I would like to say, the Hebrew word mitzvah it comes from its Aramaic root savata, which basically means to bind oneself to. So in other words, when I do a commandment, I'm binding myself to God. So it's a good thing to do a mitzvah. So the mitzvah, it's over here we're talking about the mitzvah of honoring one's parents. Nothing can be compared to this mitzvah of honoring one's parents. It's a very special, unique mitzvah. One of the main highlights of this week's Torah portion, Parsha Yitro, is about the giving of the 10 commandments or the 10 sayings. This is the focus of the Torah. This is where we are given the Torah. So far, all throughout in the book of Genesis, we read about the incidents of Abraham, Isaac, Yaakov. They fulfilled the Torah, but they never received it. Without even getting it, they fulfilled it. That's why you see later on in Genesis 26, verse 5. Genesis 26, verse 5, it talks about the testimony of what God gives concerning Abraham. What does it say? Because Abraham obeyed my voice, kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my law. Very important. The Hebrew says, mitzvotai, kukotai, torotai. Mitzvotai is mitzvot, that is laws. Kukotai is statutes, which is something that I don't understand, but I just do it. And Toratai is basically commandments or laws. Here, it's the same vocabulary the Torah uses later on in the book of Exodus and in the book of Leviticus when it talks about mitzvot, kukot, and Torah. So before Parsha Yitro, many mitzvots were done. Until now, many mitzvots were done. And these mitzvot, these commandments were done even though they were not commanded to do it. In fact, we read that Abraham used to do things which he was not commanded to. So one of the things that he did was that he basically kept the Shabbat. And he was not commanded to do it. There was no rabbi to look over him. And we see that our ancestors, they all did all of these commandments or these mitzvot because they had faith in God, because they were in love with Hashem. That's the beauty of these commandments, This week the Torah is given to us. The word Torah in many of our English Bibles are translated as law, but that word law is a wrong translation. The word Torah is actually instruction, or it can also be hitting the mark. When we sin, we miss the mark. When we do Torah, when we live according to God's word, we hit the mark. So it's very, very important. So if you have taken time to actually read Exodus chapter 19, you will be really amazed at this production that is happening over here. Hollywood, Bollywood, they would not even come close to what is happening at Mount Sinai. This is really amazing. Now, I really recommend, if you have not really ever taken time to see some of these movies, I really recommend you to watch the Chosen series, which is really, really amazing, which gives us a glimpse of the Jewishness of the Gospels. So, but what is happening in Exodus chapter 19 is something very difficult for our human mind to even comprehend. See what it says over there in Exodus 19. Exodus 19 verse 16. It says over there that it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there was thunderings and lightnings. Now, the word thunderings is a wrong word in English because the Hebrew uses the word kolot. So in other words, it's not thundering, there are voices. Now, more than one voice is happening over there, it says. And then it says, Uva rakim, and there were lightning. So basically what is happening over here in Exodus chapter 19, the chariot of God, the presence of God, Hashem himself has descended upon Mount Sinai. In fact, it was so loud that not only the Jewish people heard it, but the nations also heard it. During that time, Balaam was the prophet of the nations, and many of the people of the nations came to Balaam and asked him, Balaam, what is happening? Is the world coming to an end? And Balaam said, oh, don't worry about it. It's this Jewish people, their God has come upon Mount Sinai. So much it was. So when we read Exodus 19, see the events that is happening here. There is voices. There is lightning, there is a cloud, there is smoke, there is the sound of the shofar. And then I want you to take time later on to compare what is happening in Acts chapter 2, Maseh HaShelakim, and see what is happening. So the same event that is happening in Exodus chapter 19 is a replica of another event that is happening in Acts chapter 2. It's basically the same thing. Okay, so many people say that the church was born in Acts chapter 2. Wrong. No, the church was already there. In fact, there was no church. Okay, it was basically Israel. So, but nevertheless, what I'm trying to say is the giving of the Torah is seen by everybody. Everybody sees this wondrous occasion, not just the Jews, but also the nations. Moshe, he goes up to the mountain. He comes down the mountain after 40 days. Now, many of times when we see, if you've seen the movie 10 Commandments, the old 10 Commandments, what is the picture that comes into our mind? Moses coming down the mountain with these two lukot, or these two tablets. I know most of us have seen that picture either in some synagogues or even if you have watched these movies about 2 stone tablets that Moses is bringing about. Number one, 99% of the time the picture that you see is not accurate because the tablets were not rounded on the top like we see many times, but that's not correct. The tablets were in fact rectangular. It had sharp corners. And many of times we see that Moshe was carrying these tablets as if it was an iPad with him. But that is also wrong because it was almost 2 meters high. It was really huge. But nevertheless, I'm not going to get into the technical part of all these tablets. But we see that Moshe is basically, it's huge and it is heavy. It is not light. It's very difficult. It's like, we have this granite shop next door. I want us to go and ask them for a 2 meters piece of granite and try picking it up. It's huge, it's heavy, it's not as simple as we think it is. So the pictures are basically wrong. But anyway, Moshe is basically coming down with the 2 tablets. And the commentators come along and they ask the question, why 2? Why are there 2 tablets? Why are there not 1? Or why couldn't there be 3? Why 2 tablets? The sages explain that the reason why it is 2 tablets is to separate the 2 groups of mitzvot. The first 5, meaning the right tablet, where the right side of the tablet is the mitzvot between me and God. Ben Adam Lamakom. Literally, the right side of the tablet is commandments between a person of God. Meaning, I am going to be your only God. Don't believe in any other God. Don't worship any idols. This has to do with mitzvot between me and Hashem. That's all. The left side of the tablet or the other 5, it deals with commandments or mitzvot between man to man, one to one another. It is between man and his fellow. It says over there, if you notice, the 5 mitzvot on the right hand side. What are the 5 mitzvot on the right hand side? I am Hashem, your God. Number 2, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. All the 5 on the right hand side, if you see, it has the name of God on it. It has the name of Hashem on it. But the 5 mitzvot on the left hand side, it does not have the name of God. What does it say? Do not kill. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness against your neighbor. Do not covet. There is no name of Hashem in the left-hand side of the 5. On the right-hand side, there is the name of Hashem. It is very important. So we see that the first set of tablets is mitzvot between me and Hashem. The second set of tablets on the left-hand side is mitzvot between me and one another. And the sages come along and they say that the reason why in the first 5 the name of Hashem is there and the reason why in the next 5 the name of Hashem is not there is to show us that the first 5 are a little more important than the next 5. In other words, it is higher, it is something between me and Hashem, not between me and the other person. Now, if that's the case, the question we need to ask ourselves is, why is honoring our parents in the first 5? The first 5 is between me and God. If that's the case, and the next 5 is between me and one another. If that is true, why is the mitzvah of honoring my parents in the first 5? The mitzvah of honoring my parents has to do with me and another person. It's not between me and Hashem. The 5th commandment, it's on the right-hand side. The things on the right-hand side are the mitzvot between me and Hashem. Why is honoring our parents on the first set, on the first 5? That's the question. What is the Torah trying to teach us? Because now it's really confusing me. If the mitzvahs between me and another person, me and my parents, if it is that, then this mitzvah should actually be on the left-hand side. If it was on the left-hand side, then it would be 4 and 6. Correct? So it doesn't work symmetrically. So I know Hashem can do whatever he wants to do. But nevertheless, the Torah has already divided the mitzvot into 2 tablets. One tablet, the first 5, deals with commandments that I am obligated between me and God. The second tablet on the left-hand side is my obligation between me and my fellow brother or the sister. The mitzvah of honoring one's parents on the right-hand side, on the side of the mitzvah between Hashem, if it is there, then the Torah is actually trying to teach me something very, very important. What is it? That is what we are trying to discover today. There's this famous story told about the Caesar of Rome, the Roman Emperor Antonius, who was a very good friend of Rabbi Hanina. Rabbi Hanina was not only a great sage, but he was also a politician. He was a great big speaker. He had friends in the Roman Senate. And during one of their conversations, Antonius would ask him questions about the Torah. And during one of those sessions with each other, he asked him, you know what? How come in the two tablets, when Hashem is talking to you Jews, because the first 5 commandments are mainly for the Jews, how come Hashem mentions his name there? And in the second set of tablets, on the second set of commandments, the mitzvot that deal with one another, with all of mankind, how come Hashem's name is not there? Because if you look at do not kill, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness against your neighbor, do not covet, it's basically commandments that everybody should actually do. That's not only for the Jewish people. That is also for the people of the nations, everybody from the nations. But when it comes to I am the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, it is only the Jewish people who are brought out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. When it comes to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, that's only for the Jews. When it comes to you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, that's only for the Jews. Now you might be wondering, if that is only for the Jews, then what the hell am I doing keeping Shabbat on this day? You know, that's why it's very important to also look at the writings of Rav Shaul. Apostle Paul says in Galatians chapter 3 verse 29 that if you belong to Messiah, then you are a seed of Abraham, and then you are heirs according to the promise. That means Abraham, because by faith, even though he was not commanded to do it, he did it, and because of that, God told him he was righteous. We are not commanded, we are not obligated to do it, but through the Messiah, we have the opportunity to do it, and when we do it, we will be rewarded, because we are not doing it because we are commanded to do it, we are doing it because we love Hashem. That's all there is to it. Then it also goes on to say in Romans chapter 11, verse 17, where it talks about the olive branch or the olive tree. It says, 11:17, it says, but if some of the branches were broken off, not all, it is only some. And a wild olive branch, which was basically representing you and I, were grafted in among them, then what have we become? We have become equal sharers or equal partakers of the root of the olive tree with its riches. I have now become equal partners. If I become equal partners to the covenants of God, then I have an obligation out of love, not out of duty, but out of love. I'm doing it because I love. So Antonius basically said, you know, I respect the first 5 commandments are for the Jews. The other 5 are for the nations. But how come in the first 5, the name of Hashem's name is there? That when Hashem is talking to you, to the Jews, but when Hashem is talking to the world or to the nations, it does not have the name of Hashem. Why? So, you know, Rabbi Hanina was a politician, like I said. And he didn't need to get into any type of confrontation. He had to give a very, very diplomatic answer, because this is the ruler who is asking him a question. So he said, listen, it doesn't fit well that the name of Hashem should be put along murderers. Do not kill, do not commit adultery. It doesn't sound nice in having Hashem's name with a murderer or one who commits adultery. It doesn't resonate well. And then he says, you know, for example, when we go to any street in any city or any kingdom, there are these statues of these kings or emperors that are ruling. What happens? We don't put these statues of the emperor or the king or the queen in the bathroom. We just put why we don't do it? Because it doesn't look good. Okay? In the same way, we don't put Hashem's name along with murderers and those who commit adultery. Now, in today's day and time, for example, if you see, what do? We put a mezuzah on the door. We put a mezuzah on every door of our house except the bathroom. Why? Because it doesn't sound good. It is not good. That's why on the bathroom door, we don't put the 10 commandments. On the bathroom door, we don't put the mezuzah. But in all other doors of our house, we put the mezuzah. Because for us to remember, we are in covenant with God. God is asking us to do it. Okay? So we put it on every door. So Rabbi Hanina basically gave a very diplomatic answer. It doesn't look good, that's why. And close the chapter. There is another commentator called Kli Yakar. He said, that excuse which Rabbi Hanina gave was basically to keep the emperor quiet. But that's not the truth. In other words, he's saying that Rabbi Hanina did not want to start an argument with the emperor, so he just wanted. So he said that the reason why in reality Hashem wanted to separate these two groups of mitzvot. One group is between me and God. So Hashem put his name there and he makes a clear separation. The other group is between me and another person. So Hashem says, I'm not going to put my name over there. You need to deal with it. You need to rectify it. And then we will talk about it. So once again, the question is, how is the mitzvah or the commandment of honoring one's parents on the right hand side on the first five? That is the mitzvah between one person and the other. How is Hashem in there? The halakha comes and says, honoring your parents, they're basically comparing honoring your parents to honoring God. That's the law. The fact that you must honor your God is the fact that you must honor your parents. Very clear. That is the law. The law is because you honor Hashem, then you must honor God. Honor your parents. Nothing else. The halakha says that all the laws that I have between me and Hashem are applied between me and my parents. That's halakha. What is halakha? Halakha is how do we walk these commandments of God? How do I do it in my everyday life? Why do I do it? This is the source. This is what we don't decide what it means to walk, honor our parents. The law has already told us how do we honor our parents. What does it mean to honor our parents? Some people say, I will only do what is written in the Torah. But the Torah doesn't tell us how to honor our parents. All the Torah says is honor our parents. How are we going to how are we going to honor the parents? The Torah says keep Shabbat. How do I keep the Shabbat? The written Torah does not tell me how do I keep Shabbat. That's why we go to the oral interpretation. They tell us how do I keep Shabbat. So the oral tradition helps us understand how do we keep it. Okay? So some people say, I will only follow what the Talmud says or what the Gemara says, which is also not correct. The written law is interpreted by the oral law, which is halakha, and that's what we go by. So the halakha says that all the rules that apply between me and God is applied between me and my parents. End of story. No questions asked. Any doubts? All the rules that is between me and God is applied between me and my parents. Why is that? Do you argue with Hashem? Then you're not allowed to argue with God. You don't argue with your parents. You don't argue with Hashem. Are you allowed to argue with Hashem? No. So you don't argue with your parents also. Are you allowed to contradict or question Hashem? So you don't contradict and question your parents. Very simple. That's what the halakha, that's what the law is. Are you with me? Okay? Don't separate the two. So there are many stories the sages in fact share when it comes to honoring one's parents. So what I'd like to do is share some stories if that's okay. Okay? In the sages talk about, this is the story concerning Rabbi Tarfun. Now those of you who may have heard of this name Tarfun. Where have you heard it? You will hear it very soon in the Pesach Sedur, Haggadah. Okay, Rabbi Tarfun was basically one of Rabbi Akiva's friends. He was the one who basically led the nation of Israel in a very difficult time during the Romans period. He is basically, Rabbi Tarfon is an offspring or great grandson of Ezra, the priest, who was a great sage. There is a story told about his mother who was very old. He himself was very old, so his mother was much older than him. And he used to take his mother for walks, and they used to go everywhere. And it says that one time on Shabbat, when he goes on a walk with her, and her shoes basically rips off, breaks. And she could not step on the floor. And on Shabbat, you cannot fix anything. You're not allowed to fix anything. So what does he do? He basically bends down, puts his hand on the ground, and where she would step on his hand till they reach home. He could not carry her. She puts his hand on the ground for her to walk. The next day, the mother goes to his yeshiva and tells the students, you got to give him a blessing for what he's done, because he's he needs to get a blessing for long life. Because in the Torah, what does the Torah say? When you honor your parents, what do you get? That your days may be long in the land which the Lord your God gave you. So his students basically said, she told his students, give him a blessing that he may have a long life. And they said, sorry, we don't want to give him a blessing. She says, why? That's not nice to talk about like this about your rabbi. He's your teacher. He's your master. Don't you want to give him a blessing? So they said, if this is his rectification to do the mitzvah of honoring one's parents, he did it amazingly. And then if he has done it properly, after his obligation is over on the earth, he will die. We don't want him to die. So we don't want to consider what he did as a great mitzvah. You don't understand. Each of us are here on this earth to rectify something. When we fulfill our rectification on this earth, it's time for us to say goodbye and go. How much young or how much old you are, I don't know. How much time it's going to take also, I don't know. I'm not the judge of all these things. We are sent on the earth to rectify something. Maybe now, so they said, if his rectification was to honor his parents, and if he has done it amazingly, then he would go. If we give him a blessing. So we don't want to give him a blessing because we don't want him to go. They were just thinking of themselves because they don't want him to die. They didn't want to give him a blessing because once a person reaches their rectification, in other words, once a person has fulfilled one's purpose on why they were sent on the earth, it will be time for them to go. And they didn't want him to die. So they didn't want to give him a blessing. They didn't consider this mitzvah, what he did of honoring his parents, as something serious. They just said, chalo, he just did his obligation to his mother. But nevertheless, this is one out of many of the stories to the extent that some people or some of the sages have gone in terms of honoring one's parents. There are many such stories even from the nations, people who did not know the God of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who also fulfilled this mitzvah of honoring one's parents in a very powerful way. In fact, the sages say in the tractate Kiddushim, it talks about a story concerning a group of sages who lost one of the stones of the breastplate. Aaron's breastplate had about 12 stones. This is not something one should actually lose. But it happened that they lost it. What happened to the stone? Where did I put the stone? Did I put it over here? It's just missing. They didn't know what happened. So they started asking around, and they were wondering how they were going to get a replacement. Finally, they found that there was this one individual who was a Gentile who had a similar stone. So they go to him and they tell him, you know what? We lost one of the stones of the breastplate, and we heard that you have the same one. And he said, yes, I have one. And they talked to each other about the stone, and they agreed on a price, and they said, yes, X amount of money we will pay for the stone. No problem. And after the price is decided, they tell this guy, you know what? Now please go and get it. So he said, sorry, I can't get it right now. Please come back later. And they said, what do you mean come back later? We need it right now. He said, no, I can't give you right now. They said, why? Because it is in the safe. Okay, if it's in the safe, let's go to the safe and let's get it from the safe. No, I cannot get it in the safe. Why can't you get it in the safe? Because the keys of the safe is under my father's pillow. And what's the problem with it? My father is sleeping right now and I don't want to disturb him. Now they thought, oh, this guy is actually trying to negotiate like we do over here. He wants a better price, higher price. So he said, we'll give you double the price. He said, sorry, I cannot do anything. Even if you give me double, I will not wake up my father. You have to wait until he gets on. So they think he's still negotiating. So they triple the price. He said, sorry, you have to wait. Some hours later, finally the father woke up from his sleep. He goes to the safe. He takes the keys, opens it, and he basically gives them. They gave him 3 times the amount of the money. And he said, sorry, I don't want it. I don't want 3 times the money. I want the money which we agreed on in the first. I don't want to take more money because I am doing the mitzvah of honoring my parents. So you know what the sages did? The sages gave him a bracha, a blessing. Because they were so impressed by the fact that he's doing a mitzvah of honoring one's parents and he did not want to cheat them. They gave him a blessing because he had a small backyard in a little farm. They gave him a blessing that in his farm, he would have the blessing to rear a red heifer. This is amazing. So far, we only had 9 red heifers during the time of the Beit HaMikdash. The first red heifer was in the wilderness during Moses' time. And during the first and the second temple, there were 8 red heifers. And there is one final red heifer that needs to come. That is the 10th red heifer. That is when the Messiah will come and he will slaughter it and cleanse everybody. This is amazing because you must have heard many years ago, even in the US, maybe I think in Oklahoma, New York, New Jersey, there were people who were having these red heifers. And nevertheless, they gave him a blessing that he should have a red heifer because they knew this was a priceless thing. It is even said, when it comes to the red heifer, it is said concerning this guy who actually had a red heifer in New Jersey, that the Temple Institute offered him millions of dollars for giving his red heifer to them. And this guy said, no, I don't want to take money for the red heifer, you take it for free. They say this is a Gentile, somebody who does not believe in all these mitzvahs. He's willing to basically give it for free. Because who the Temple Institute are people who are basically preparing the laws and now preparing for the rebuilding of the temple. By the way, which also reminds me, there is this great guy which I've known actually for many years, known as Rico Cortes. He has a ministry called Wisdom in Torah. And Rico Cortes has actually been studying about the temple and the second century temple times for a very long time, along with his friend and teacher, if I'm not wrong, Joseph Good. So he basically has a lot of great teachings, and I've been talking to him for some time and looking at the possibility of having him come to India to teach about the temple and the Garden of Eden and all those stuff. That's a different thing. But what I want to say is that he actually has come up with an app which you need to pay either on your Android or on your app store, this app is even approved by the rabbis. The rabbis look to it because there's so much of details concerning the temple. This app is called Second Temple app. Okay, it basically it will give you an experience of the first century temple period like never before. It is an in-depth, interactive 3D creation of the temple based on historical archaeology and Jewish sources. So if you're interested to learn about the temple and just to see how big the temple is, you want to have a visual of what the temple was, you can download the app for yourself. That's for you, just a thing to take. Now, when it comes to the mitzvah of honoring one's parents, it is not only for the Jews, but this mitzvah is for everybody. Also, people from the nations need to honor their parents. There's this other story told about a person who was a politician. He was like a top minister. He was in the Senate or like in the Knesset. Once during the middle of his meeting with other ministers, his his mother, who was elderly and mentally unstable, she walked into the council room and she took off her shoe and starts hitting him in front of everyone. And as this hitting is going down, she's not hitting anybody, she's hitting a Knesset member. And as she's hitting, her shoe basically flies out of her hand and falls on the floor. And he basically bends down, picks up the shoes and give it back to her so that she can continue hitting. This is just an example of the mitzvah of how one does when it comes to honoring one's parents by a Gentile. So the Rambam said that the mitzvah of honoring one's parents is equivalent to fearing Hashem. The mitzvah of honoring one's parents is equivalent to fearing Hashem. Which means this is a very, very important mitzvah. How do we compare our parents to Hashem? I want to get the help of two sources. There are many sources, but I'm only going to focus on two sources. One is from the Sefer HaKinuk, which is basically the book of education, and one what the Ramban basically talks concerning the mitzvah of honoring one's parents. In the Sefer HaKinuk, it talks about many, many years ago, more than 200 years ago, there was a certain individual by the name of Rabbi Yonatan, who basically became the chief rabbi of Prague. He was a pillar in Jewish history. In his days as a rabbi, he was a rabbi of a little town, but very quickly he was known for something extraordinary. And at some point, he basically got an invitation to come and become the chief rabbi of Prague. Now, this is like an upgrade from being a local rabbi with a few members to the rabbi of a whole city. Okay, that's what he's become. So after the messengers came and gave him the offer, he said he needed some time to think about it. He didn't jump into the opportunity right away. He said, please give me some time. You know, in today's day, if anybody gets such opportunities from a small shul to become the rabbi of Jerusalem, no thought, no thinking, just jump in, I am the rabbi. You know, so in 3 seconds they make a decision. But he said, give me a couple of weeks, let me think about it. So they said, okay, no problem, we'll give you a couple of weeks. And so basically the whole town basically came to know that our local rabbi has now been nominated to become the chief rabbi of Prague. But you know what? Nobody asked him anything. Nobody opposed anything. There was no demonstrations. Nobody, in other words, business was going as usual. A couple of weeks later, the messengers came and wanted to know what is his final decision. He said, yes, I will become the chief rabbi of Prague. So they said, okay, great. Pack up your bag. Let's go. And he said, hold on. Give me some time. I need to pack my bags. It's going to take time. So with all respect to the chief rabbi, they basically said, okay, we'll give you time. Day after day went, days, weeks, time is going on. Finally, they go back to the rabbi, say, with all due respect, chief rabbi, but we need to go back. People are waiting. We have jobs to do. We have families. He tells them, I need some more time. Please wait for a couple of days. Finally, after a couple of days, he calls everyone from his town to the shul for an evening meeting. And in the evening meeting, he says, I know, you all know that I have been offered to the post of the chief rabbi of Prague. And I would like you to know that I have accepted the position. I will be leaving tomorrow, and today I want to give you my final farewell speech. And he tells them, I hope that tomorrow when I leave, you will always stay the same as you were all these years. And he tells them one thing after the other. He says that I hope that you will continue eating kosher meat. I hope that you will continue slaughtering the animals how we used to do it. I hope that you would salt the meat. I hope that you would not steal. I hope you will not desecrate Shabbat. And for a long time, he's basically going on halakha after halakha after halakha. And he says, I hope that you would not, I hope that you would not, I hope that you would not. And after some time, the Gabbai, basically the leader of the community, he says, excuse me, Your Honor, what is that you're talking about? You sound like you don't trust us. You've been our rabbi for years. Why do you think for a second that the minute you leave, we will stop robbing, stealing, eating non-kosher, etc., etc.? We will not be doing any more mikveh. Where is all this coming from? So he tells them, yes, I'm worried. I'm scared for you. And they are like, what do you mean? Why are you scared about us? What would make you scared for us? And he says, I don't know what's going to happen when I leave. They don't understand. He said, Rabbi, what do you mean? So he tells them that the whole time I served you as your local rabbi for years, every question you had, I answered. Every time you came knocking on my door, day or night, I taught you. I inspired you. I gave you my all. I married many of you. I even did Brit Milah to many of your children. And many of you also. I did everything for this community. A few weeks ago, when you heard that I was selected to be in the position of the chief rabbi of Prague, you knew that I would be leaving soon. Not only one of you came, none of you asked me to stay back. Nobody came and told me, you are my rabbi. Why are you leaving? Is it money that you need? Do you need a more salary? Please, we will give you more salary, but don't leave. If are you looking for a bigger position? He said, none of you did anything. None of you came. None of you asked me to stay back. None of you even thanked me. None of you came to give me a farewell greeting. Nothing. And then he said, someone who is not thankful, someone who does not have a type of gratitude, appreciation for what I did here will quickly go off the path of God. Someone who does not appreciate the local teacher will quickly go off the Torah. And he says, somebody who is ungrateful. He says, so the person who is ungrateful, I don't believe in him. I have no faith in him. I don't trust in him. Why? Because if you're ungrateful to me today, tomorrow you're going to be ungrateful to Hashem. Sorry for telling the truth. That's why I was telling you that I hope you're not going to steal. I hope that you're going to do kosher cutting, kosher slaughter. I hope, because you're ungrateful. Not even one of you came to thank me or give me any type of encouraging words. And he says something that is one of the most powerful things in the Torah. He says that the root of bad characteristic trait or bad midot in a human being is when a person is ungrateful. When a person is unappreciative. He does not know how to appreciate the good somebody has done in his life. And he goes on to say, but the root of all good midot in the Torah is a characteristic which is called in Hebrew hakarat hato, appreciation. You want to have a good attribute, good character trait? The good character trait, if you want to see in a person, is a person who knows how to say thank you. It's a person who basically appreciates. Hakarat hato is a Hebrew term for gratitude. It basically means recognizing the good, which is very, very powerful, friends. Recognizing the good. All throughout in the scriptures it talks about it. Hakarat hatov is appreciating that somebody did something good for you. If you appreciate that somebody who did something good for you, that is the root of the good character trait in your life. And he says, this is why the mitzvah of honoring one's parents is part of the first 5 commandments on the right-hand side of the tablets. Why? Because that is the protection that we are going to have in being loyal to Hashem. If you are loyal to your parents, you will be loyal to Hashem. If you are grateful to your parents, you will be grateful to Hashem. That is called hakarat hatov. Something somebody did for you, good, you acknowledge it. You thank the person. You appreciate the person. Even if that person did it for you 20 years back, it doesn't matter. We don't give up. Are you with me? A teacher of the Torah, one who teaches you Torah, is like a parent. He has given you his all, her all. And if you're not appreciative to that person and you feel that you can just walk off whenever you want, you have not understood. You will walk away from the Torah. You will walk away from God one day because you have showed it in your character. Somebody did something good for you. They went out of their way for you. Be grateful. That's called hakarat hatov. You know what? What if you do that? Hakarat hatov, you're grateful to your parents. When you're grateful to your parents, you're always grateful to Hashem. There is no perfect parent. There will never be a perfect parent. If you find one, please tell me. And if you can do something about changing your childhood to that parent, let's see. We have no power where we are going to be born. We have no power in the color we are going to be born. We have no power to whom we are being born. We only have the power to accept what God has given us and revere Him and honor Him. Some people say, oh, I wish I had some other parents. You have no clue. You have been given the best parent. They might be evil in your eyes, but in the eyes of God, God has given you the best and the perfect parent. He says that if you are grateful to your parents, you're going to stay a good Jew. If not, it is a sign that you lack faith. He says the most powerful thing. If there is only one thing, friends, that we can take from this morning's teaching, is that somebody who is ungrateful to their parent, to their teacher, will eventually leave Hashem. If you see a person who has an ungrateful attitude, at some point of their life, they will leave Hashem. They will not stick to Hashem. This is the idea what the Sefer HaKonuk says. And he says, remember how much God has done for you. Just look around, see how much God has given for you. He has given you life. He has given you food. He has given you sustenance. You have a teeth to eat. You have a feet to walk. We have every reason to be thankful. Are you with me? I heard this unbelievable story. This is an amazing story. To see how Hashem rewards somebody who is thankful. Most people today, unfortunately, are unthankful. And that's what it says all throughout in the Brit Kadasha in the last days of the type of people we're going to see. People do so many things for them, with them. They just brush it off as they owe me something. It is their responsibility. What pastor is doing, it is his responsibility. No. This is not my responsibility. There is no payment for it. I am not getting paid from any of you. There is no payment from the government also. So what we do is basically because we care for your soul. It has nothing to do with anything else. But the story is, it's about a kosher plant in the United States. You know what's a kosher plant? A kosher plant is where they basically rear animals, slaughter it according to the right way, meaning that the animal will not feel any pain when its life is going off, and basically salt it properly. The meat is poured. So in this kosher plant, every day trucks would come to this plant to pick up all the kosher meat. And of course, who comes for kosher meat? Basically, the Orthodox Jews. Nobody else will go for kosher meat because kosher meat is expensive. Now, even in kosher meat, there are different varieties. There is glatt kosher, which is much more expensive than just kosher. Okay. So usually the time they come to pick up the meat from the plant is usually very early in the morning, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And when they come, they basically go to the refrigerator to get the meat. When I talk about refrigerator, I'm not talking about our small refrigerators, these gigantic rooms which are a refrigerator. Yeah, it's a room-sized refrigerator. Recently I saw some Hindi movie about some lady who was in a pizza shop. Do you guys know what that movie was? Millie? Oh, you guys know it. Good. Millie! Okay, Millie was stuck in the refrigerator. That's the type of refrigerator we are talking about. It's so big, so much of space, lots of meat, kosher cut meat. One night or one morning, there was this group of 40 drivers who came, and they all came together. And one day, as usual, they were driving out as usual. And as they were leaving, the guard stops them and tells them, wait a minute, there is one guy who is missing. And they were all shocked. What do you mean there is one of us who are missing? The guard said, yes, one of your driver is missing. So they started looking around, and sure enough, one guy was missing. So they go back to the plant and they find that this one driver was stuck in the refrigerator. He basically went to get some meat and the door accidentally got closed. And if he would have been there for a couple of hours, he would be basically frozen to death. Now, in those days, there were no buzzers. There were no ways that you could open it from inside. It all had to be outside. But nowadays, there is a buzzer, there is an alarm, anybody gets stuck, and you can even open it from inside. But finally, the driver is found. He comes out, and the driver goes to the guard and basically thanks him for saving his life. And he says, my friend, that if you wouldn't have noticed me, I would have frozen to death today. And he was like, what do I owe this thanks to you? How did you even remember me? Because we all look the same. We all have beards. We all have a yarmulke. We all are wearing black. How is it possible that you could even remember that I was there? and he basically said, you are the only one that every morning that you walked in said good morning to me. And you're the only one every time you left said thank you and good night to me. You acknowledge that I exist. You acknowledge that I am part of the system. And without the God, the system doesn't work. He said, you're the only one. And because of that, I noticed that I was missing my good night. So when everyone came out, I didn't get my good night and I didn't get my thank you. This is amazing. This is how God rewards somebody who appreciates someone else. There is this great rabbi and commentator in the Torah known as by the name Safat Emet. He says, if the mitzvah of honoring one's parents is such a great mitzvah, why don't we say a blessing to it? When we put the tefillin on, we say, blessed are you, Lord our God, King and Creator of the universe, who has sanctified us with His commandments and commanded us to put the tefillin. When we eat bread, what do we say? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. When we wash our hands before eating bread, what do we say? Blessed are you, Lord our God, King and Creator of the universe, who has sanctified us with His commandments and commanded us concerning the washing of the hands. So he basically says, if the mitzvah of honoring one's parents is such a great mitzvah, why is it that we don't actually say a blessing? In fact, he even takes it a step forward, which is another question for another time. It's about why are we not even saying a blessing before we say, use the Pesach Haggadah, which is, we'll talk about it later. So he says, his question is, why don't we say the blessing for the mitzvah of honoring one's parents? And he says, our sages wanted honoring one's parents to be spontaneous, to be natural, to be on your own free will, not because you are commanded. I put the tefillin on because I'm commanded to it. Even if I don't feel like putting it, I put it on because I'm commanded to do it. I don't want to transgress the commandment of God. So the Shabbat Ahmed says that the reason why we don't say a blessing for the mitzvah of honoring one's parents, because Chazal, the sages, did not want us to do it because we were commanded to do it, but they wanted us to do it because we want to do it. Are you with me? So if this is a straight out commandment, a mitzvah, you would say, I have to do it because it's a commandment, not because I want to honor my parents. So one type of doing it, you're doing it because out of duty, out of obligation. In our terminology, we would say, I'm doing it out of legalism, law, under the law, all that kind of junk stuff we talk about, okay? But he's saying, you don't do it because of that, you do it because you love God. In fact, any commandment, you should do it not because of any obligation. You do it because you love God. So with that said, you remember, we just left Mitzrayim last week. And the Torah says in Exodus 13:18, it says that when the people of Israel came out of Egypt, they were armed, it says over there, 13:18. See what it says over there? They 18. Next verse. This Hebrew scriptures and this scriptures, no. Last line. Yeah, they went up armed, correct. Okay. So this is what, so in other words, they had weapons. We know that they had weapons. You know why? Because they fought Amalek. Okay? But the question is, how did they even have an army? How did they get the training to fight Amalek? But the fact is that they had an army, they had weapons, and they were prepared. If they had an army, if they had weapons, and if they were prepared, the question is, how come they did not fight the Egyptians? Why did they take a U-turn and fight the Egyptians? At the Red Sea, you remember what did they say? Oh, Baba, I'm scared. I can't jump in front of me, Red Sea. Behind them, I don't know what to do. Oh, Moses, why did you count us? You wanted us to die. Why they did not attack the Egyptians? The answer is hakaratato, appreciation. Because 210 years ago, when their ancestors came into Egypt, prior to slavery, when 70 people came into the nation, they needed green cards. And the Egyptians accepted them and they took them into the land. They gave them a place to live. Yes, Pharaoh tortured them for 210 years, but nevertheless, they did not forget the good, the tov the Egyptians did for them 210 years ago. And because they did good for them 210 years ago, we cannot find them. We see even in the case of Moshe, when it came to the plague of the water turning into blood, Moshe doesn't strike the rod. Why? Because of hakaratato, appreciation. Why? Because the river Nile protected him. The river Nile did not drown him. The river Nile did not cause him to be destroyed. So he could not strike it. He said, Aaron, you strike the rod. Are you with me? So this first explanation which we talked about, which we're talking about is from the Sefer HaKinuk, and it is the concept of hakaratato, appreciation, gratefulness. The sad reality is that majority of the people don't have appreciation. Hakaratato means that we are appreciative that somebody did something good for you, but the sad part is many people think that we owe them something. The point to be taken is that we need to be grateful and we need to thank people who did good for us, even if they did it 40 or 210 years ago. We still continue being grateful to them for the rest of their life. Are you with me? Somebody did something good for you? Appreciate it. Don't stamp them on the back. Your parents took care of you? Don't throw them out of the house. Don't kick them out. When you were a place as an infant, you could have been kicked out. You could have been aborted. Your parents didn't do it. You're still alive and kicking. Let's be appreciative to them. We cannot find another parents. We cannot exchange anybody's parents. Your parents are good for you and the best. Now let's go to the next commentator. The next commentator is the Ramban. In the book of First Kings, we read about a prophet by the name of First Kings. Who is the prophet in First Kings? Who? First Kings. Elijah. Eliyahu Hanavi. It's between 1 Kings 16, 17, 18, all that is about Elijah. It was a time when Elijah met King Ahab. King Ahab was a very wicked, evil king. And he one day confronted Elijah and told him, you know what, Elijah? Your Torah is absolutely nonsense. Because your Torah says that if you go and live according to the laws of Hashem, then Hashem will give you rain and he will give you sustenance. I and Jezebel have taken the whole Samaria area and we have made it into idol worship. Every citizen of our land is involved into idolatry. We are doing everything that is exactly opposite Hashem, but look at us. We have rain all the time, we have prosperity, and we have everything that we do. The Torah is one big hoax. The Torah says that if you follow Hashem, if you don't follow Hashem, there will be a curse in your land. But look at us, how much rain we have, but the rain is falling on all these people who are basically idol worshippers. So Eliyahu Navi said, really? Okay, fine. He said, I'm going to make a decree. No problem. I'll help you out. He said, there is not going to be rain until I say so. The heavens were shut and it kept the word of Elijah the prophet for 3 years. Now the sages say something very interesting. They say, Hashem has 3 keys that he does not give to anybody. 3 keys that he doesn't share with anybody. He holds the keys. The first key is the key of rain. Hashem controls it. He will give control. He will give rain to whoever he wants. When, how, what, it's all up to him. The second key which Hashem has is the resurrection of the dead. Nobody can resurrect anybody until Hashem has given that person the power to resurrect the dead. And the third key, they say, is the key to give birth. Hashem controls who is going to have children and who is not going to have children. 3 keys that Hashem holds. He is the one who decides who gets the keys. These are the keys that Hashem does not give to anybody. So Elijah, you know what he said? He was very upset with what Ahab said, and he said, oh God, please help me. Give me the key of the rain. And because I don't like this guy, what he's saying. Hashem said, no problem, I'll give you the key. He basically made the decree, and there was no rain for 3 years. As a result, what happened? There was a great famine. Even Elijah suffered the consequences of that famine. He basically didn't have anything to eat. And the Torah, basically the Tanakh says that he had to go to the widow's house. And long story short, the widow basically fed him, took care of him. And basically one day what's happened, the widow had a little boy. The little boy basically died. And the widow asks Elijah, please, if you can do anything, resurrect him back to death. This is 1 Kings chapter 17. So Elijah, you know what he went? He went to Hashem and said, oh God, Hashem, please give me the key of the resurrection of the dead. And Hashem said, oh, wait, Elijah. You can't have 2 keys and I have 1 key. You have to give me 1 key back if you want the power of the resurrection of the dead. So Elijah gave him the key of the rain, and God gave him the power of the resurrection of the dead. And basically, short story, basically the boy basically wakes up, and the minute the boy wakes up, the Torah says, the rains came. Are you with me? This is really amazing. So the Ramban says, giving birth, Hashem decides who is going to give birth and who does not. So when a parent gives birth to a child, they have received a key from God. Just imagine how many parents have received the key from God. Which means Hashem gave the parents the key. When Hashem gave the parents a key, what is Hashem saying? Hashem is saying, I trust you. How many people have this key? Many people have this key. Hashem says, I'm giving you this key to bring a child into this world. The parents get a key. And when the parents get a key, the parents are partners with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Are you with me? The Ramban says the parents become, in fact, creators. They become partners with Hashem. They have the key to bring a child into this world. This is something we should not ignore. Parents becoming partners with God. So when you are frustrated with your parents, when you answer back to your parents, in fact, you're answering back Hashem. And you're frustrated with Hashem. When you go against your parents, you're in fact going against Hashem. I know it's really hard to digest. If I do something against my parents, I'm doing it against Hashem. Why? Because they are partners. If you are my partner, and if somebody goes against you, then when you go against somebody, sorry to tell you, you're going against me. It's like this. We are all part of the community. Somebody is against you, but doesn't tell me that they're against you. When they are against you, they are actually against me. They're not against you, they're against me. Because we are partners. We have decided to be a family. We have decided to be a community. So when somebody tells lies into yours about this community or about yourself or about us, they're not telling about you, they're telling about me. You're basically telling about God. You're basically telling God who began this work is a fool to begin this work. You're telling that you're smarter than God. Are you with me? You know, there's a story later on in the book of Numbers we will learn concerning a man called Pinchas. He was very upset with this guy called Zimri. Zimri went with a woman called Cosby, and basically they had relationships in front of everybody. They had relationships in front of the tent of the presence of God. Pinchas was so zealous for Hashem. Why is that? Because Pinchas could not bear the fact that the power of giving birth is being desecrated. Instead of taking this power and bringing a child into the world for the purposes of God, they're using this whole thing to mock God. Pinchas could not take it anymore. See what the writers of Hebrews say. Hebrews 13:4. Hebrews 13:4. What does it say? It says that marriage is honorable in every respect. And in particular, sex within marriage is pure. Within, not outside. But God will indeed punish fornicators and adulterers. So what we see here is that the parent has power given by God, a key, so that the parent can bring life into this world. In fact, the sages say, this is in connection to a man called Rabbi Yosef, he says that every time he would hear the footsteps of his mother, he would get up right away. So his disciples asked him, why are you getting up? And he said, I hear the footsteps of the Shekinah. The Shekinah is the divine presence of God, the feminine aspect. And that is why he gets up. Isn't that amazing? I can tell you story after story after story of how the sages kept this mitzvah of honoring one's parents. So with all this said, let's summarize what we have learned so far. Because the Torah is trying to teach us a very, very important lesson. So we have understood that the Torah wants us to be thankful. The Torah wants us to be having an attitude of gratitude, to have appreciation for our parents. The Torah is telling us that we must honor our parents. Why? Because they gave us birth. Why? Because they gave us life. Why? Because they are partners with Hashem. So we have two profound messages over here. And what we have learned so far. So let's go back quickly and close with that two scenarios and what we should do concerning those two scenarios which we heard at the beginning. The first is about the girl whose father was not there for her in her childhood. He left her, didn't pay her tuition, didn't send her birthday cards, abandoned the family, abandoned her. And in the last days of his life, he's about to die. He's asking for forgiveness. He wants her to be around. This is called appreciation. Hakaratato. But the question is, she's asking, what am I going to be grateful for? He didn't do anything. He didn't raise me. He didn't support me. He did nothing. What do I need to be grateful for? I don't have anything to appreciate him for. What is the answer? If she's going to be doing the mitzvah of honoring one's parents, she does it simply for the fact that it is her father. Nothing else. You might have nothing to appreciate. But why am I fulfilling this commandment? I am doing it because he's my father. I am doing it because she's my mother. That's all. I'm respecting my teacher. Why? Because he's my teacher. He has taught me. I'm not going to let go of him. The only reason she does the mitzvah of honoring one's parents is only because he gave her birth. He gave her life. Isn't that amazing? There's another commentator who basically says, actually the commandment of the 10 commandments is not only given here in this week's Torah portion. Later on in the book of Deuteronomy also it talks about the 10 commandments before Moses goes. But if you observe it very carefully, it basically, there are a few words added when it comes to honoring your parents or in the book of Deuteronomy. In the book of Deuteronomy, it says that you should honor your parents as I commanded you. When? In Egypt. Hashem gave the commandment of honoring one's parents while they were in Egypt. When they left Egypt, was there anything they had to be grateful for their parents? Their parents in Egypt did not give them toys. Their parents in Egypt did not give them food. Their parents in Egypt did not give them anything. Who gave them anything in Egypt? It was Hashem. It was only God who provided for them. So the question is, why would they be even thankful to their parents while they were in Egypt? Hashem said, because I commanded you, then I commanded you. So you still have to do the mitzvah of honoring one's parents. Why? Because God commanded. It has nothing to do with appreciation. It has nothing to do with being grateful to your parents. Honoring one's parents has to do with the fact that Hashem gave, through your parents, you life. Because the parents gave life to the kids in Egypt, they didn't give them anything else besides life. They didn't abort you. They didn't destroy you. They didn't kill you. They didn't murder you. They did not stop having relationships with their husbands or wives because they were going through a tough time. They basically kept you. They wanted to have life, and they allowed you. They became procreators with God. So why do I honor God even in such a difficult situation? Because they gave you life. We're living in days and times that people, when they get to know, many people, when they get to know they are pregnant, they go and destroy the child. They eat a tablet. They run away. They commit suicide. You have destroyed a life. It might have happened by accident. It might have happened by innocent. It might have happened for any reason. Even for some evil reason, maybe you got pregnant. But we have no right to take away the life that God has already implanted into your system. Maybe it is a shameful thing. Then you need to find a way that how can I bring this child into this world and give it to somebody who is able to take care of the child. Maybe you don't have the financial resources to take care of it. I know there are systems available for us for people, especially for teenagers who get pregnant before their marriage. If anybody comes to know about it, it's a bad thing. For such teenagers, there are facilities that they can go away from their surroundings. Stay there for 9 months. Give birth to the child. Leave the child and they can go back to their culture. Forget about the child. But the child is born. So in conclusion, why do we honor our parents? We honor our parents because Hashem says to honor them. It has nothing to do with appreciation. It has nothing to do with the fact that they didn't do any good thing for you. So in regard to the girl who asked, what should I do with concerning my father? The answer she got from her rabbi was, still do the mitzvah of honoring your parents. It doesn't matter if he did something for you or not. It doesn't matter if he fulfilled his obligation to you or not. You still do the mitzvah. Why? Because he brought you into the world. Let's see what Paul says, Shaul says. Ephesians chapter 6 verse 1, 2 and 3. Ephesians chapter 6 verse 1, 2 and 3. He says, children, what you should do in union with the Lord is to obey your parents, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. Why? Because this is the first commandment that embodies a promise. So it may go well with you and you may live a long life in this world. That's question number 1. Now concerning the second question. The second question may be more applicable to many of us. What about the mother, about the woman whose mother is driving her crazy? She's being insulted. She's going against the daughter, making her upset, making her life miserable. So the real question that the woman asked the rabbi is, what should I do concerning my mother? The sages talk about a story about a sage who had an older mother. And she was mentally unstable. And she used to drive him very crazy. She would say, bring me this, bring me that. Do this for me, do that for me. And surely she was driving him nuts. And at some point she told him, buy me jewelry. And he said, buy you jewelry? I'm a Torah scholar. I don't have the money. He said, I want jewelry. Somehow he raised money, brought her jewelry. Sometime later, she said, I want to get married. He said, what? You want to get married? You're like 92 years old. You want to get married? Yes, I want to get married. Find me a guy. So he somehow found a guy from the old age home who could barely see. She sees the guy and said, no, I don't want somebody like this. I want somebody as young as you and handsome as you. What on earth are you saying? Where do I get somebody as young as you and as handsome as me? He really got frustrated. He didn't know what to do. So what did he do? He goes to his rabbi. Every time there's a life and death situation, any situation, they go and get help from their rabbi. They don't go and do Google search and YouTube search. Okay? Go to the rabbi, because the rabbi can tell you what to do. And so he told the rabbi what happened. What am I supposed to do, rabbi, with my daughter, with my mother? The rabbi said, you know what? Go to Eretz Israel. Go to the land of Israel. He used to live in Babylon. The rabbi said, go to Eretz Israel. Move away. Run away from her. You have nothing to do. But remember, don't answer her back. Don't get frustrated. Don't get upset. Just run. Just leave. Go away where she is not going to be next to you. That was the answer given for this. So the answer to question number 2 is that the child is not supposed to or should not suffer because under any circumstance. If the parents are causing suffering to the child has no reason to stay with the parents. But the child should not curse. The child should not get upset. The child should not go against the parents. The child should not mock. The child should not do anything. The child should just shut them out, take a turn, and leave. The Torah concludes by saying that the child should not suffer because of their parents. If the parents are driving the child crazy, make a U-turn, keep your mouth shut. Don't go against your parents. Go away. See what it says, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. Ephesians 6:4 says, fathers, don't irritate your children and make them resentful. Instead, raise them with the Lord's kind of discipline and guidance. Colossians chapter 3, verse 21. Colossians chapter 3, verse 21. It says, fathers, don't irritate your children. Don't provoke your children so that they will become discouraged. So, to conclude, we have two questions that are applicable to us and two answers that are applicable to us. We have to honor our parents. Why? Because they gave you life at the end of the day. You want to honor them because you appreciate them. If you want to honor them because you appreciate them, that's a great thing. That's an awesome thing. That's a double thing you're doing. You appreciate them. Even if they were not good to you, you appreciate them. But the Torah says on one side says that you have to honor your parents not because of what they did to you, because of what they did to you. What did your parents do for you? They changed your diapers. They paid for your tuition. They clothed you. They bathed you. They cared for you. That's what your parents did for you. How many times the father might work 3 jobs to find support for the family? The mother is working hard morning to night, cooking, food, laundry. That's why we appreciate them. Even if you think they have not done anything. But we appreciate them, we honor them because the Lord commanded us to honor them. But on the other side, they're upsetting you. They're troubling you. There comes a point as an adult, not as a child. When I say adult, above 18, sometimes we just need to take a break from our parents. It's not that we don't care for them. It's not that we don't love them. It's just that we're taking a break. So that I will not lose my temper and get angry with them. I keep a distance, but I also take care of them at the same time. The one who honors their parents is equivalent to the one who honors God. A teacher who teaches you Torah is like a parent. You honor the teacher, you honor Hashem.